Nancy Kulp's final interview confirms what we all thought was true. Nancy Kulp was born as Nancy Jane Kulp on August 28, 1921 in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Nancy Kulp grew up in a strict home that cared a lot about education. Her father, Robert Tilden Kulp, worked for the federal government collecting taxes, and her mother, Marjorie Kulp, wanted her to be curious and learn about different cultures. From the time she was young, Nancy had a quick mind and loved to learn. She did really well in school and went to Florida State College for Women, which is now called Florida State University, where she got a college degree in journalism. This early training helped her get better at communicating and gave her the clear, careful way of speaking that later became something special about how she appeared on screen. Kulp's life changed completely during World War II when she stopped working in journalism to help her country. She joined the U.S. Navy Reserve, becoming one of the first women to work as an officer in the Waves, which stood for Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service, and she moved up to the rank of lieutenant junior grade. She worked in training people to fly planes and did an excellent job. Her time in the military taught her to be disciplined, professional, and tough, qualities that would help her throughout her whole life and career. After the war ended, Nancy Kulp moved to Hollywood to become an actress, studying with a famous teacher named Max Reinhardt. Unlike many women who wanted to be actresses back then, she didn't just rely on being pretty or being put in the same types of roles. Instead, she built her career by being smart, having good timing, and really understanding the characters she played. All through the 1950s, she appeared in many movies and TV shows, often playing smart secretaries, brainy women, or unusual characters. Her movie roles included parts in The Parent Trap in 1961, The Three Faces of Eve in 1957, and Shane in 1953, where she showed she could play different types of people and had a gentle but noticeable way of acting on screen. Nancy Kulp's career became most famous in 1962 when she got the part of Miss Jane Hathaway on the Beverly Hillbillies. As the funny but proper secretary to the millionaire oil businessman Milburn Drysdale, Kulp was the perfect opposite to the show's country humor. Her acting as Miss Hathaway, smart, faithful, hoping for romance, and always polite, made her one of the most loved characters on the series. Even though the role was meant to be funny, Kulp gave it respect and kindness, making sure that Miss Hathaway was never just a silly joke. She got nominated for Emmy Awards several times for her acting, which showed how talented and popular she was. Even with all the success from the Beverly Hillbillies, the role became both good and bad for her. Like many actors who became strongly connected to famous TV characters, Kulp found that people kept putting her in the same types of roles after the series ended in 1971. But she kept working regularly, appearing in TV shows like The Mary Tyler Moore Show, The Love Boat, and Fantasy Island. She also played Miss Hathaway again in reunion specials and related projects, always welcoming the love that fans had for the character. Besides her acting career, Nancy Kulp really cared about being involved in her community and helping people. In a brave and unusual choice for a Hollywood actress of her time, she got into politics in the 1980s. She believed strongly in progressive ideas and ran for the U.S. House of Representatives from Pennsylvania in 1984 as a Democrat. Even though she lost the election, her campaign was special because it relied on intelligence, not on her being famous. Kulp thought taking part in politics was the right thing to do, showing her lifelong belief in helping others that had started when she was in the military. Nancy Kulp's short marriage to Charles Malcolm Dacus takes up only a tiny part of what people know about her life. But it gives us an interesting look into her early adult years, way before she became well known as one of TV's most unique character actresses. When she got married, Kulp was still figuring out who she was, trying to balance what was expected of her with her smart and ambitious goals, and dealing with a world that often had strict rules about women's lives and choices. Kulp married Charles Malcolm Dacus on April 1, 1951 in a ceremony at Miami Beach Community Church. The place itself suggests it was a normal and respectable event that fit with what Americans after the war thought about marriage being an important step in a young woman's life. At the time, Kulp was 29 years old while Dacus was 23, which was a big age difference that went against the usual pattern back then where husbands were often older than their wives. This detail hints that Kulp had an independent personality and was willing to go against normal expectations, even in something as traditional as marriage. Dacus worked as an account executive with WTVJ, a TV station in Miami, which put him in the new world of television at a time when TV itself was still really new. Even though Kulp wasn't famous yet, the connection to TV broadcasting was almost ironic since it predicted her own future career in television. At this point, though, Her life was very different from the studios and bright lights that would later be part of her public image. She was a well-educated woman with strong interests in learning things, and her path toward becoming successful in acting was still unclear and mostly unexplored. According to the announcement about their engagement, Kulp and Dacus had been dating for 5 years before they got married. This long time of dating suggests it was a serious and steady relationship that started when Kulp was in her mid-20s, an important time when many women of her generation were expected to make marriage and home life their main focus. Dating for 5 years means they thought about it carefully rather than rushing into it, showing that both of them probably started the marriage feeling committed and having expectations. For Kulp, this relationship may have been a way to try to balance her personal feelings with the pressure from society to settle down and get married. Even with the long time they dated and the formal wedding ceremony, the marriage itself didn't last long. Kulp and Dacus got divorced in 1953, only about 2 years after they got married. How short the marriage was suggests that big differences or problems showed up once they actually started living as husband and wife. While there aren't specific details in public records about why they got divorced, what happened shows the challenges Kulp faced in making her personal life match up with her inner sense of purpose and independence. The divorce was a big turning point in Kulp's life. In the early 1950s, divorce still had a bad reputation, especially for women, and choosing to leave a marriage took both strength and understanding of yourself. For Kulp, ending the marriage may have been an early way of showing her determination to live honestly and true to herself, even when doing that meant going against what was expected. The experience probably made her more sure that being happy couldn't happen by just following the social roles people told you to follow. For many years, fans of the Beverly Hillbillies felt that something underneath the happy appearance of television's Clampett family was never quite right. While the show seemed warm, funny, and had a kind of down-home friendliness, rumors kept going around that not all of the stars liked each other when the cameras weren't rolling. In what would become one of her last honest interviews, Nancy Kulp finally said out loud those suspicions people had been whispering about for years, confirming that her feelings toward Buddy Ebsen were far from friendly. Her words, said late in her life with really clear honesty, gave a rare and unfiltered look at how emotionally hard it was to work in a very controlled TV system. Kulp didn't speak with meanness just to be mean. And she didn't seem like she wanted to bring up old Hollywood gossip again. Instead, the way she talked suggested she was a woman who had reached a point where being polite and staying quiet didn't help her anymore. Thinking back on her years on the Beverly Hillbillies, she admitted, "I know people want to remember it as one big happy family, but that simply wasn't true for me." This simple statement broke through years of happy memories, showing a real experience that was very different from the show's public image. At the center of her angry feelings was Buddy Ebsen, the show's main character and biggest star. Kulp made it clear that her feelings weren't based on one argument or confusion, but on a way of acting she found really upsetting. But he was not the kindly, benevolent figure people imagine, she said. He liked control, and he liked being reminded that he was the most important person on that set. For Kulp, who was well-educated, spoke her mind about politics, and was really independent, this situation was especially choking. She went on to describe how Ebsen's power went beyond just his job as an actor. He wasn't just Jed Clampett, Kulp said. He acted like the moral compass, the judge and the boss. In a time when TV hierarchies were strict and disagreeing was discouraged, Kulp felt her intelligence and uniqueness were treated not as good things but as annoyances. The tension between them, she hinted, was about their different beliefs as much as it was personal. Kulp was especially honest about how this strained relationship affected how she felt about fitting in. "I never felt respected by him," she said directly. Tolerated perhaps, but never respected. This lack of respect, in her view, created an environment where small insults and quiet ways of leaving her out became normal. Over time, what might have been small frustrations turned into real dislike. "People use the word dislike," she added, "but hate is closer to the truth. I hated how small he made me feel." What makes Kulp's final thoughts so powerful is that she didn't make it dramatic. She didn't exaggerate or make her experiences sound bigger than they were. Instead, she spoke with the tired certainty of someone who had carried an unspoken truth for a long time. "I stayed professional," she stressed. "I did my job, but I paid for it emotionally." That emotional cost, she suggested, stayed with her long after the cameras stopped filming, affecting how she saw both her career and the industry that celebrated her while keeping her quiet. By admitting her angry feelings, Kulp also took back control of her own story. "I'm tired of pretending it was all wonderful," she said. It wasn't. These words were meaningful as a quiet act of standing up against the myth-making machine of classic television. Rather than letting her legacy be made simple into just happy memories, Kulp chose honesty, even if it made people's feelings about a beloved show more complicated. In the end, Nancy Kulp's final interview wasn't trying to make Buddy Ebsen look like a bad person, but to say the truth of her own experience. Her admission of hatred wasn't petty or mean-spirited. It was thoughtful, personal, and deeply human. "I don't expect anyone to take sides," she concluded. "I just want the truth to exist." By speaking that truth, she confirmed what many had thought for a long time, that behind the laughter and the reruns, there were real people, real fights over power, and real hurts that never completely healed. Nancy Kulp's final years were marked by a quiet respect and grace that was very different from the lively, unusual characters she was best known for playing. For most of her adult life, Kulp had been a cigarette smoker, a habit that was common and accepted by society during the peak of her career in radio, movies, and television. Like many performers from her time, smoking was part of the normal routine of studio life. Long hours on sets, late-night practice sessions, and the stress of keeping up a public career all made cigarettes something familiar. Back then, the long-term health problems from smoking weren't always fully understood or talked about openly. And for Kulp, like for so many others, the habit quietly stayed with her into her later years. In 1990, Kulp got terrible news: cancer. By then she had mostly stepped away from being in the public eye, having stopped acting years before and having spent her time on community work, education, and her personal interests. The diagnosis marked the start of a physically and emotionally hard time as she went through chemotherapy to try to slow down or stop the disease from getting worse. Chemotherapy treatments during that time were often really tough, with fewer choices compared to what we have today, and they often really wore patients down and affected their quality of life. Friends and people who knew her later remembered that Kulp faced her treatments with the same intelligence and determination that had been part of her professional life. Serious, thoughtful, and realistic, but determined to get through it with grace. Even with these efforts, by 1991, it became clear that the cancer had spread. At that point, the focus changed from trying to recover to staying comfortable, thinking about her life, and accepting what was going to happen. Kulp was 69 years old, an age when many people think deeply about the meaning and impact of their lives. Even though she had often been put in comedic or unusual roles, most famously as Miss Jane Hathaway on the Beverly Hillbillies, people close to her knew that she was much more complicated than the characters she played. In her final months, she was surrounded not by Hollywood excitement, but by a quieter, more personal world, one shaped by memories, thinking, and the relationships she valued most. Nancy Kulp died on February 3, 1991 in Palm Desert, California. Palm Desert, a peaceful desert town, had become a place of rest and relaxation for many people in their later years, offering calm surroundings far away from the pressures of Los Angeles and the entertainment business. Her passing marked the end of a life that had connected multiple worlds: classical education and show business, comedy and seriousness, being publicly recognized and having private beliefs. News of her death made people appreciate her work again, especially her ability to bring warmth, humor, and humanity to roles that could easily have been played as just silly jokes.